last time on sluts, pedophiles, rebels, and some light blue employees for hire.
Now, there may be some tough times uh, here in America, but this country's gone through tough times before, and we're going to do it again.
For that big, beautiful day when everybody said, oh, he's just doing this for fun. He doesn't really mean it.
I'm sure nobody saw this when I came down the escalator with Melania in her white dress. I don't think anybody saw that.
We came down the escalator, right?
How did this guy become president? The guy of the fuck your feelings crowd apparently has feelings, and so does his supporters. But somehow, just somehow, they like to show us they're in touch with their feminine side. And as we all know, it irked his nerve that Barack Hussein Obama became the first black man to be president of the United States. Oh, the tub of lard decided it would be a fantastic idea to ask the first black man to be president for his birth certificate. Have we seen his taxes yet? Or are they still on hold? Right. But you want somebody to show you their birth certificate. Oddly enough, when President Obama at the White House Correspondents' Dinner showed you his long form birth certificate and just whipped it out right in front of you, you couldn't bear to smile, you couldn't bear to joke, you couldn't bear to laugh. Well, that's what females do. Once Trump becomes president, after the 44th president, Barack Obama, he makes sure to cancel the White House Correspondents' Dinner because he doesn't want a relationship with the traditional media, or as the right wing would call it, left-wing news. Why get in bed or become friends or have a relationship with the left-wing media when you have Fox News or right-wing media? Or basically you just give Fox News all the exclusive interviews and hire them into your cabinet because they know exactly what they're talking about or doing. Divisive rhetoric was used while Barack Obama was president, asking him for his birth certificate as if he hadn't already proved that he was a U.S. citizen. How foul and fucked up was that? No, that's some racial shit. Let's just be honest. And I'm sorry if your feelings get hurt or you want to say that I'm a racist because only a racist knows what a racist is. Yeah, you're right. It takes one to know one, and I know what you are. You're a suckhead dog. And where was Fox News to tell you that? So in the words of my brother and I, he would say, if you're scared to go to jail, don't take penitentiary chances. And just so he knew I understood what he was saying, I would retort, if you can't fight, don't throw the first punch. From day one of his presidency, it was doom and gloom, and from that moment on, it was disastrous. What am I talking about? Oh, that's right, you forgot. His first inauguration speech.
Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. And we are grateful to President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama for their gracious aid throughout this transition. They have been magnificent. Thank you. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another. or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little to celebrate for struggling families.
The man from New York City sold y'all that bullshit. I'm sorry. I'm a firm believer. Nobody from New York should be allowed to run for president. I'm serious. These people are sellers, and they're extremely good at it. He sold this country that day on doom and gloom, and you fell for it hook, line, and sinker. In some instances, he's correct. I mean, look at the debt. How did we get here? Well, I'll be 48 this year, and what I'll say to that is this. I've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 presidents. And out of those 7 presidents, 4 of them have been Republican. 4 of them have been Republican. That means the other 3 were Democrat. And if you grew up in the 80s and 90s like I did, then you have an understanding of who these Republicans are. There's some delusional, cantankerous human beings. And Donald Trump did what he was supposed to do, which was fall right in line by attacking Barack Obama about his birth certificate and using racism instead of telling everybody what his plan was. He usually said some of the dumbest shit, and somebody had to come from behind him and say, no, this is what he really meant. How do you tell me what I just heard is not what he meant? It was what he meant. He never came back to apologize and say, hey, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I meant to say this, but this came out. It was too frequent. It was too fast. It happened many times, and that was big league. By the time Trump's second year in office, he had already spent $2 trillion, 1.3 of it being on tax break for the wealthiest Americans in the United States and corporate tax, while the middle class got a rate hike. Yes, the middle class's taxes went up. Those who are employees, your taxes skyrocketed. And here's the thing. If we keep going at this traditional rate that we are so used to, we will eventually become like Mexico. We will have far too many billionaires. And the majority of the population in this country will either be middle class poor or poor. But what we're seeing now is an escalation in prices because Donald Trump, he wants to fight everybody on tariffs, which wasn't a good idea. By the way, Mexico had the largest amount of billionaires on the planet in the 90s after their 1982 economic crisis. Their economy flourished. You know, misery loves company. So when Donald Trump takes office and he starts screaming and hollering about how he's going to add these tariffs to China, or he's going to add these tariffs to all of these other countries' imports, one has to question, why is it that the dumbass U.S. citizen couldn't go back and read up on why the citizens of Boston threw a fucking hissy fit over the British adding a tariff to tea? One has to question, did we not learn anything from elementary school? Did we not learn anything from the Boston Tea Party? Did we not understand why it was we could not say a tariff was a tax? And because we honestly don't understand economics, we could not see what was going to happen to us. So when Joe Biden gets into office, you bums start screaming and hollering about how the hell are these eggs worth $6? Well, shit. If you tax an import or anything around the business or a business, then the price of everything is going to skyrocket on the consumer. And when Donald Trump chooses to tax an import from a certain country, who do you think is going to pay for that? Hello, Rose. The person who is buying shit, the person who can't stop spending their money in our economy, the consumer, who is you. And when you try to explain that to dumbass U.S. citizens, you know what you get in return? One, a look that says, what? Or two, a smart ass who thinks they know everything and you can't tell them nothing. They'll say something like, oh, if I'm making the customer pay more, then that means I have a larger profit margin. No, dummy. That just says you're revenuing more money, but the profit margin has not moved up. And when the consumer, when the person who is investing in this economy, when the customer can't afford anything, what happens to the businesses? What happens to commerce? But wait, you got a credit card, you'll survive. And so do those corporations and small business owners. They have loans and they have credit cards. So everybody will be just fine and things will work out right, except it'll be higher in price. Oh, but that's okay. Think of it as you buying some expensive clothing like Louis Vuitton for groceries. Every time I think back on the pandemic, I can't help be disturbed when it comes to the amount of money that was spent on keeping an economy afloat where everybody is shut down. The economy has stopped. The world has stopped. Well, the world hasn't stopped spinning, but whatever this thing is that we've created that all of us needed to live under, it stopped. And it stopped for a good reason, so that all of us wouldn't get wiped out. And yet, somehow, we incurred a damn near 2.5, and I'm being liberal with that number, but I know it was at least 2.1, and I know it was more than 2.1, so I'll say $2.5 trillion that we just handed to people who were doing nothing more, in some cases, than just sitting on their behind. For those who were passing out food, that's a job. For those who had to deliver people's parcels and packages and mail, because, you know, what are you gonna do when you can't leave the house? Order some shit. And that's what the folks did. I remember my route before I was sent from where I work now to the LA district. My route has skyrocketed in packages. I was receiving roughly every day, 48 packages. All of a sudden, I have 300 every day. Every day. People had lost their minds. People had lost their minds and couldn't figure out what to do with their money. So they spent it. Some people went out and partied. Some people did some things. Some people went and hung out with their friends and caught some COVID. Some people, had to work like me. 7 days a week. 7 to 11. I had to be off the street at 10 o'clock. So I could stay and work on some things up until 11 o'clock. That's a long time to work. Sundays I got a reprieve because I didn't have to work that long. Man, they was getting money during that pandemic. And here I am working all of these damn hours. I talked to one person. I was told they were getting $600 from the feds every week. And the state of California was giving them $600 for unemployment insurance every week. So if I do the math on that, 1,200 times 4 equals $4,800, all tax-free. Ain't got to give none of that money back. And on top of that, you got your stimulus check. So if you were one person, you got a stimulus check of $1,200. Well, if you had a child, you got $1,200 plus 5, $1,700. But if you were a family, you got even more than that. We spent $18 billion coming up with a vaccine. And then we turned around and we handed out PPP loans to small businesses to make sure they were able to pay themselves and their employees. We spent $7.8 billion doing that. Yeah, we spent a lot of money on welfare. And some people were screaming and hollering. They wanted to go back outside so they could go back to work so they could dye their hair. Well, yeah. And we did all of this, not recognizing what we would wind up walking into. You guessed it, inflation. Because once those doors were open and people were let outside, all the spending they did while they were indoors, they did even more when they were outdoors. Hopefully some of them were smart and they paid off all their debt. Hopefully some of those people did the right thing and saved their money, but I doubt it. And from that moment on, the eggs started being $6 in the state of California. Some of y'all got it a little bit later. And that's when I started noticing the rise of cost of many other goods and services. And I don't blame Donald Trump for spending all of that money. I don't blame any president in that situation for spending all that money, but at some point, you just can't be handing it out like that because you wouldn't do it any other time in your life. So why would you give millionaires more money to play with? They're millionaires. Why would you give people who have credit cards that are completely unlimited more money to play with? Because what they wound up doing was buying Bitcoin. Yes, cryptocurrency. Dogecoin. And they took that PPP money and they made money off of that. And you didn't collect no money back in interest. Sounds like a grand idea. A big old plan that led to nowhere. And now we have a disparity amongst the rich and the bottom. Who are the employees? The top and the bottom. Because the ones who are somewhere in the middle learned how to make money off of social media. This episode was recorded by me, edited by me, produced by me. Who am I? Fetch Productions. Make sure you listen anywhere you find podcasts.